this world and the spiritual world are right on top of each other. That not only that, your mind is influenced by the spiritual world. So your body's in the physical world, your spirit is in the spiritual world right now. And there's a just as equal, if not more so, an influence from the spiritual world around you on your mind. So
yes, Curtis, thank you so much for giving us the chance to speak to you today. So Curtis is an international speaker, host of the Off the Left Eye podcast, and chief visionary officer at the Swedenborg Foundation. For those who don't know, Emanuel Swedenborg was an 18th century Swedish scientist, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe among the other things, he was also the inventor of the hovercraft. Can you verify that?
He had a drawing. He had a drawing for a couple of things, you know, submarines, hovercrafts, things that he never brought into production, but he was ahead of his time on. Yep.
Okay, well, so we don't know for sure whether he had the near-death experience, but we know that he started to have a number of intense dreams and visions, which resulted in him being able to contact the spiritual world and induce out-of-body experiences at will. And in all fairness, from the little I know, the accounts that he describes about the afterlife are very much in line with what NDEers talk about these days. That's why I was really looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, I feel like anybody who's interested in near-death experiences, and I love near-death experiences, and I love IANDS, so I'm really happy to get to be on this program talking to you there. I feel like when I was maybe 19, 18, that's when I first read my first near-death experiences. I read Howard Storm's My Descent into Death and George Ritchie's Return from Tomorrow, Betty Eadie, Embraced by the Light, and Raymond Moody's Life After Life, which is kind of the book that kicked it all off. So that was just awesome. It gave me the really like a feel for what the dying experience is like, what the light is like, what life is like. So I'm really grateful for that and have continued to keep up on near-death experiences. Anybody who likes near-death experiences, you would love to know about Swedenborg. I mean, Swedenborg is such a great matrix to add to your understanding of near-death experiences. So much so that in Life After Life, the book Raymond Moody wrote, where the term near-death experience was coined, mm-hmm. There was a whole section on Swedenborg in that book because, as you were saying, it's this historical example Swedenborg was writing in the 1700s of somebody describing a spiritual reality that is very much like what people describe in their experiences. So, but the thing that's fascinating about Swedenborg is the duration of his experiences. So I've met people and read books by people who will have a near-death experience, and then maybe they have one more, maybe they don't, and then they kind of reflect on that and it changes their life. But it was an event back in time for him, and this is very well documented in his own writing, so you got to take him at his word for it, but there's some corroboration as well. He started to have these experiences, and then they never stopped. He was having them every day for 30 years. And because he was such a accomplished and trained scientist, he was just very good at rigorously recording everything about them and uncovering and writing the systems of how to not just what spiritual experiences are like, but why they are the way they are. I can look at most near-death experiences now and understand why they are like they are because of my knowledge of Swedenborg. So why do people see white light? Why are people dressed in white robes? Why do you go through a tunnel? Those sorts of things. So I'm very excited to introduce people, if they don't already know, or broaden their understanding of, I think, a remarkable historical near-death experience and the meeting of science and spirituality, an early one, because Swedenborg, prior to all this, he was a very successful scientist and inventor, nobleman. He was just doing great in society. He had a great career going for him, and he was famous and he was well respected. And then he started to have these experiences, and it was sort of the meeting in him of the natural sciences and the spiritual sciences. So it's pretty cool.
Well, do we know how it all started? Like whether there was an experience that triggered this whole journey for him?
Yes, because he was keeping a journal when it started. it's, as I understand it, it was just his travel journal that is now published under the title Swedenborg's Journal of Dreams, Emanuel Swedenborg's Journal of Dreams. There's a couple of different versions out there with great commentary by different scholars. As far as I know, it's the earliest recorded instance of somebody writing their dreams down and trying to interpret them in sequence. So he was at first just traveling, and then he started to have these intense dreams. And so he would see like the date, and he'll say, I had this dream. And then he starts to try to psychoanalyze his dreams, to say this, I think this meant this, and which that wasn't really a thing back then. This was before Freud or Jung or anything. And so he started to do that, and they started to get more and more vivid and intense. And you can kind of see over the days when they open up into being what we would now call spiritual experiences. And so rather than there was a couple of breakthrough experiences for him where he started to have experiences when he wasn't asleep, or he had a particularly he believed that he met Jesus, and that was a really potent turning point in his life. There's one where it's the first time a spirit talked to him. That was something. So there's a couple, but overall, it was this process that unfolded in him gradually, which culminated in him achieving a state of being where he would have these spiritual experiences every day after that, and be able to really be lucid in them, and go and learn things and check in and create this. He changed his life after that, changed the trajectory of his work, stopped publishing scientific books, and instead just published 30 volumes on what he found on the other side. So it was a career shift, and a lot of this community thought he had lost his mind. He did not get great reception on this, because if you're a scientist that suddenly says, I'm hearing spirits, what do you think is going to happen? But there's been people since then who have found a lot of value in it. Actually, it's influenced a great many things. Probably, you've been influenced by Swedenborg even though you don't know it, because a lot of poets and thinkers and artists and religious figures have drawn a lot of inspiration from Swedenborg, even if his name isn't mainstream.
Well, so I don't expect you to summarize the content of 30 books about the afterlife and stuff, but is there any way you can perhaps give us a picture of, an idea of the afterlife according to Swedenborg? Yeah.
This world and the spiritual world are right on top of each other. They're right on top of each other. You are an example of that. Like the conscious part of you that's watching this video right now is a spirit, is spiritual. And the physical part of you that's like the thing that's moving the vocal cords from me and getting the sound out, that's physical. So there's an interface between the spiritual and the physical world right there in every single person. So that not only that, your mind is influenced by the spiritual world in all kinds of ways. So just like you think about your body's influenced by the physical world. Right now, what I'm seeing, like the visual impressions I get, are dictated by what's in the room around me, what lights are on. The things that I hear depend on what's making sound waves. So how hot am I? Am I going to sweat during this interview? Depends on if the AC is on. You're influenced by the physical around you, even more so when there's like people in the room with you and they're talking about things. That totally affects what kind of mood you're in, what you're thinking about. So your body's in the physical world, your spirit is in the spiritual world right now. And there's it's just as equal, if not more so, an influence from the spiritual world around you on your mind. So to Swedenborg, this was something that sort of shocked him when he began to have these experiences that every day as we go around, just like we have physical influences, there are spiritual influences, that we are surrounded, like our spirit is somewhere in the spiritual world, and there's people in that world that are around us, and there's places and things, and those things, while not always really directly, they have an effect on you. Your moods, the kinds of things you think about, the way you act in life, that's really influenced by your connection to the spiritual world around you. So Swedenborg used the term the spiritual world to talk about everything in the afterlife. And it's both something you would recognize right away, and it's something that's fantastical and beyond description. So by that I mean, you're still a person when you go into the afterlife. This is you see this a lot in near-death experiences. People they see their body down on the table and they're like, oh, that's me. I didn't know I looked that weird. And then they go, but they're still them. They still have hands and they can still speak and they can meet other beings that they have conversations with. They see loved ones who have passed and they look like people. So there's a, you're still you in the other way, and there's still recognizable features. And this is all through near-death experiences as well. There's fields and there's lakes and there's mountains and there's trees, there's buildings. There are the things that we would recognize from here. So in some ways, there's a lot of similarities. Then there are some huge differences. There's no time and space in the spiritual world. He says there's an appearance of time. So things still progress in a sequence, but it's not fixed like it is here. So again, in near-death experiences, you'll hear people say, I don't know if I was there for an hour or for years. That's the way that spiritual time progresses. It's more about states. The way I think about it is here, if let's say you're on a vacation somewhere, like you go to the beach and you have to leave the next day, but you feel like, I don't want to, I'm not ready to go yet. So in the spiritual world, it'd be like, once you're done being at the beach, then you're done being at the beach. Like the state ends. So the states determine, and we see this a little bit here. If you're eager to do something, often the time can pass more quickly. If you're dreading something, the time pass. He says the reason that's like that is because you're a spirit in a body. So that's the way spiritual time works. And space is also apparent. You can travel sort of instantly based on your intent. And then from there on out, I could keep going for a long time, but there's just a much more magical and open world. It's like thoughts and feelings can be shared. You can pass good feelings from one person to another. People can share. People will talk about getting knowledge downloads and things in near-death experiences. Swedenborg talks about how communities, you kind of come into the knowledge of them as you come. He talks about a world that reflects the inner parts of you. So like the kinds of thoughts and feelings that you have in you influence like the buildings around you and the animals around you. So your inside is out there. It's a world of consciousness. So here, what dictates the surroundings? Like, why am I in the kind of room I'm in? Well, it's because at one point somebody with a hammer and some nails put a certain thing together, and that's just what it is. It has nothing to do with how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. The consciousness, it's all material. The material is what matters. In the spiritual world, consciousness drives it. So the kinds of things I love and the kinds of feelings I have and the kind of beliefs I have, that affects the environment around me. And so it is for everyone. So there's sort of a visualization around people of what's deep inside them. The final thing I'll say is that love is like gravity there. So here, the reason why everything is where it is because of gravity. That's why the solar system is the way it is. That's why you stay on the planet. It's what pulls everything together. There, love pulls people together. So people who love similar things or in similar ways come together into communities. He talks about a bunch of communities in the afterlife, all sort of centered around people who love similar things. Really, that determines kind of where's your home in the spiritual world, where it's wherever what you love is, and even so much so that you get there and there's a particular house that's like your house, and you can tell because it's in the community that's around what you love and the way you feel about it and stuff. So there's a real merging of the inner and outer worlds there.
You often talk about angels as well. And
yes.
Yeah, please tell us what are they, and is there anything that people can do to get in touch with our angel army?
Yeah. Okay. This is great. Well, Swedenborg will use the term angel, but by it he uses it in, I guess, a different way than some people do. Because by it he just means people like you and me who are now in the state of mind that he calls heaven. Yeah. So heaven is a state of mind in which the joy of doing helpful things for people is your favorite thing. So when we all have different things that we love, and there are certain things that we love more than other things. Like I said, love is like gravity. So everybody has what he calls a ruling love, or this is the thing that's most important to them. Once you get to the point where what's most important to you is, I love doing things that help people that make life better for people, then that's called heaven. And so anybody who gets into that state of heaven is what Swedenborg would call an angel. And so angel is kind of like here you go, you're a kid, then you're a teenager, then you're an adult, then you're old. The next stage would be spirit, and then hopefully angel, if that's where you want to try to go. So an angel is just somebody that, and because they love that, that aligns with the divine, because there's a divine love is love for everyone. So once you're aligned with that, it's like that love and that truth can just start pouring into you, and you become this amazing thing. Like people report in their experiences where the angels have these amazing love pouring out of them all the time, this brilliant wisdom, and these powers to heal and help and do things. And all the angels, like they all have a job. All angels have a job. That heaven, something he discovered about heaven is that everyone there has something constructive they do that's the center of their life. So he talks about some people who what they love above anything else is welcoming people who have just died, and like making sure their transition goes well, and helping them and educating them and taking care of them. There's some angels who take care of children who died young in the world, and they have a special eyes and like making sure. We just did an episode about that. There are some angels that protect people, make sure that they're not getting harassed by anyone who's trying to cause them harm. There's a million things that angels do, but they all have jobs. So to call on our angel armies, you may sometimes feel in life like you're alone and you don't have any angels with you. According to Swedenborg, that's impossible, because if you're conscious, you've got angels around you, because there's an essential, you have to have at least two angels with you. One angel kind of associated with your mind, and one angel associated with your feelings, because that's what connects you into the larger stream of consciousness. So you always have at least two angels with you, one in your heart, one with your heart, and one with your mind. Now there can be more. In fact, Swedenborg would say that your spirit is in some community, depending on what you love. And so that can be a community full of angels that can be around. So they're always there with you. And they, particularly in your life, they're trying to do something with you. And that is particularly, they're trying to get you to have goals that are good. So they're trying to get you to have altruistic goals in life. And that's what they'll try to bend you toward. Like, what am I trying to do in life? Am I trying to help people or not? And because the more you're doing that, the more angels can come closer and closer and actually kind of live with you. When you get good, inspiring thoughts and feelings, that Swedenborg would say that's the divine coming through angels into you. So that when you feel that uplifting feeling, or that when you're feeling despair and something picks you up out of it, that's them. I mean, that's the influence of heaven, Swedenborg would say, with you. So I think that part of the way that you connect to that is to label it as such. So when you have something good in your mind, and you can say, "Oh, well, like, thanks, angels," or "Thanks, God," that does something. That starts to do something. So, you just don't want to get too involved in the stuff that is the opposite of being an angel. So that would be, being an angel is like you want to love and serve everyone. The opposite is sort of like selfish, dominating other people. Like I'm the only one that matters. Nobody else matters. The more you do that, it's not like the angels won't like you, but it's the opposite thing. It's the opposite to their way of life. So they just can't, love gravitates you together. If you love if you love being cruel to people or something, that's the opposite. So it's just going to push you farther apart. So you can call on your angels. They're always around. And the more that you love what they love, the closer you get.
Well, thank you for sharing. And you also talk very often about finding true intuition, which I know Swedenborg often refers as perception. I know there's some interesting case studies, the famous accounts of the Stockholm fire, was the widow of the deceased French ambassador, and I think the meeting with Sweden's queen. Would you mind telling us a little bit about it?
Sure. I mean, if you just Google Swedenborg, I think the first thing that comes up is his Wikipedia article, and in there, there's I think the most famous anecdote about those sort of like psychic abilities that he ended up with. It's called the Stockholm Fire. Now it's interesting because Swedenborg doesn't, in his books, he never writes about being able to be clairvoyant and predicting things. He doesn't tell you how to do it, but he, by all accounts, he could. And this was just sort of a side effect of the state that he was in. So the Stockholm Fire is fascinating because there was quite a lot of witnesses to it. So he was he lived in Stockholm, but he was away. And he was at a dinner party like a couple days travel away. And the dinner guests noticed him getting upset at a certain point in the evening. He was just like pacing and upset. And they said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Well, there's a fire in Stockholm, and it's getting near my house." And everybody was like, "Well, there's no phones. There's no like, how do you know that?" And then later in the evening, he relaxed and he was like, "Okay, well, they put it out 2 houses away from mine." And then that was it. And then later, when news finally got there, it was just as he said. There was another. There was a couple of other. I don't know how often he ever used those powers, but he seemed to sometimes, when people asked, he would do it. So there was a woman who had lost a receipt. And if she didn't have this receipt, I forget the exact circumstances, but it was going to be financially ruinous for her. Her husband had died. She didn't have a lot of money. So she needed this receipt to show something that would allow her to get some money. And so Swedenborg, went somewhere spiritual and came back and said, "Okay, it's behind your dresser over there," and she got it. And then the last one is that there was a queen, I forget which queen, and she had heard a little bit that Swedenborg was starting to have these experiences. At first, by the way, he published his books anonymously. So it was only after people figured out who he was and that people started to ask him about this stuff. But for the first for quite a while, I think for 10 years at least, he was publishing these spiritual books under no name. So the queen said, "Well, if you really have these experiences, tell me something that only my brother would know." And apparently what he said to her shocked her enough that she believed in it. So while you can have those, Swedenborg, again, it's funny because a lot of people ask, like, well, how do you have spiritual experiences like Swedenborg did? But he never talks about that in his books. To him, having spiritual experiences is not necessary. Like it's obviously can be good and can lead you in the right direction. But the most important stuff is not that. The most important stuff is trying to live that angelic life that will draw heaven closer to you. So for him, when he uses the term perception, he'll actually talk about it's this ability you can get where you can tell in yourself which thoughts and feelings are, from heaven and which aren't. So when something, for him, he said he got in a state where he was aware of the whole spiritual world. And he talked about, his most popular book is called Heaven and Hell. And to him, those were both states of mind. So heaven is a state of mind where where helping people is the thing you enjoy the most. Hell is a state of mind where exploiting and hurting people is what you enjoy the most. So it's like anything in between. And human beings are free to love whatever they want to love. The spiritual world is full of all, just like the physical world is full of all these people who, some people are deeply into both kinds and some people are in the middle. Spiritual world is like that too. And you're influenced by both sides, kind of like the angel and devil on your shoulder. You get these differing influences, and you don't always know like what's. You can think back to like, oh, there's some ways I used to be that I thought were great to be back in the day, but now I'm like that. I can't believe I was like that. So the perception that you're really looking for is that you can tell when something comes in. If is this coming from the light or is it not? And he got to the point where he could just see that very clearly. And whenever there's anything that wasn't going to help him came in, he would just ignore it. And when something came in from heaven, he would act on it, and that's the state. It's a pretty cool flow state you can get into.
So I've studied NDEers and their after effects for some time now. Also, I find it really fascinating that the changes on people that may have not had a direct experience. No, I don't know whether you are an experiencer yourself, or there you go. So like me.
No.
So I'm very curious about, over years of integration of your research and stuff, how you have changed your perspective in life. So the first question, which, the answer is pretty obvious for an NDEers, but perhaps not so much for us, is, are you afraid of death these days?
Oh man. So I would say that I don't feel like afraid of death for myself. I really, who knows? Everybody says that till it's like coming for you. But I think that I really am pretty convinced that there's immediate conscious survival of death, and that the other side is really great. And there's times when life has been hard here, and I'm like, all right, I made it to 40, not that much longer to go. However, what's really hard is, I have a daughter who's 9. And I am afraid if something should happen to me, I don't want her to be sad, I got a wife. And so that's one that it's a different kind of trust. I mean, Swedenborg talks about, this is some concept I've been trying to lean into, but he talks about divine providence. Divine providence is like the guidance of the divine intelligence over everything that happens. It's like everything happens for a reason. And the reason is that ultimately it's leading toward a good end. That everything in life that ever happens, whether it hurts or it doesn't hurt, whether it leads you to a happier and happier state in eternity. And you can come to trust that and believe it, which is I love that. It comforts me. It's hard when tough things happen, losses happen. So it's like, you can't, but what about for the other people who would get left behind? So I'd say I'm not really that scared of it for myself, but I am still wrestling with well, how could you ever, you want to stay alive because people depend on you. So.
Well, so I can see, from the little chat that we had, that you have integrated a very similar outlook at life as an NDEer. So I was wondering if perhaps there has been one thing that made you change your mind from one day to another, or was it more like a gradual process of integration?
Hard times.
Interesting. Okay.
So Swedenborg talks about these states that he calls spiritual trials. And he says that you can't grow spiritually without those. Those are an essential component. And it's when you you don't really realize that's what it is, but you come into great distress. And then for me, I've had a number of those. I've struggled with mental health, and when things are really tough, that's when you really need to take this spirituality stuff seriously. Yeah. And you really are looking I need my angels to help. I need the divine. I need these truths. So for me, that's why. I mean, I wasn't always planning to talk about Swedenborg for a living. I thought I was gonna. I thought I was gonna do study ecosystems and biology. That's what I went to school. I was going to school for. But because I had a couple of times where I really needed these ideas. And still have those pop up for me. That's when it becomes real. When you really realize your dependence. I mean, I think you see it a little bit. I don't know if people are familiar with, let's say, Howard Storm's book, My Descent into Death, which I think was an early NDE classic. For me, it seemed like one of the foundational ones. And a lot of people have this where they'll have an NDE with a distressing part in it, followed by a comforting part. So for him, he had a very distressing initial part, and then it was followed by a very comforting and restorative part, and that was important to him. That had an impact on him. So for me, generally, I've become interested. I do love the idea of integrating and how can you solve the problems in life through spiritual thought. So I'm trying to do that, but it really goes into overdrive when I'm in these challenging times.
I can certainly relate to that.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know, how else has all this research affected the way you look at life these days?
I got to know more the state of people's spirituality. I'm just being on, hearing so many comments and getting a better sense of like what the human condition is. I know that spiritual experiences are much more common than you might think. People have a variety of worldviews. You might think, oh, there's like Christians and there's Muslims and there's that, but there's like so many different variations inside there, and so many people are just kind of going on their path where they pick some from here, pick some from there, they put this together, they have their own unique. So there's such a diversity of human souls out there. And so I've also learned more about the importance of spiritual ideas in helping people, because our channel's got such a better reception than I ever thought it would when I first started it. Put Swedenborg stuff online, nobody's going to be interested in that. But not only have people been interested, but people have written in and said, like, this really helped me get through this hard time, or that. So I've seen the material do for other people what it's done for me, and so that makes me believe in it more and feel more urgency around doing it. So I'm excited about. I feel like there's always going to be a missing piece for human beings if we don't have this spiritual side of it. So I love the idea of being a little part of helping to move that forward.
Well, you touched earlier on a point which I'd love to hear your take on. So do you feel we are perhaps entering a new era for humanity? That we were seeing a shift between a material to a more spiritual society, and that perhaps that was triggered by, maybe the field of near-death studies and some of the new fields of science that are finally able to demonstrate what perhaps only religions have been trying to transmit to us over the millennia.
I do think so. And like everything for me, it's influenced by Swedenborg. I mean, he said he didn't really make any predictions about the future except for one, which he said that there's a new spiritual era dawning for the human race. Okay. To him, he said that there was a big shift in the spiritual world in the 1750s, that there was there's these cycles humanity goes through, and that one turned over right then. And he said it's not going to show up right away, but now human beings, because I said before, the spiritual world affects our consciousness. Like what's going on there affects the kind of thoughts we have here. So he was saying that from then on, people would start to have more freedom in spiritual thought. And since then, we've seen this explosion in technology and human rights and all these things. He predicted, that there's this new era coming, which is going to be going to be better than we ever had it in humanity. And I would think it's happening. I would think people sometimes look at the world and they say, oh, there's so much bad stuff. I think we're just more aware of it than we used to be. I do think that there's a lot more good happening. And I do think that the acknowledgement of the existence of spiritual world and the maturation of the ideas around that, I think it's coming. And I think near-death experiences are a big part of it, both like the open study of them and just that so many people are having them. I don't know if so many people used to or not, but they sure are now.
Yeah, no, you certainly found me very hopeful with what the next decades are going to bring. That's brilliant. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned from all this research? I
think the two things that I always use, we touched on them before, but is you got to realize the spiritual world influences you. So, and the way that plays out is like, don't just believe everything you think. Scrutinize it, like try to say, all right, I'm going to keep what's good. Because for somebody who's had anxiety and depression, you get all these negative thoughts and feelings and stuff to be able to say, all right, some of like that, this isn't just me thinking of stuff. This is like, there's forces that are trying to help me and forces that are not. And so that changes the way I look at it. And that's been a really useful tool for me to be able to say, all right, well, I just want to look for the stuff that's from heaven. So that's been a huge one. And then divine providence, the idea everything's going to be okay in the end. That you can trust the process, even every little minute detail. He says that the smallest elements, what there's a truck beeping outside that I can hear right now. Somehow that's part of the plan. Everything is, with every detail of how your mind is going and the way your life is going, it's all going somewhere good. It could be a bumpy ride to get there, but the more you trust in it, the less bumpy that ride feels. So those are the two big ones for me.
Nice. Well, there's something that you touched on, which I'd love to be able to discuss because some of our viewers may find that useful. So, do you still get occasionally any anxious thoughts? And if so, how do you deal with them these days?
Well, yeah, you came to me at a good time because I'm going through an anxious period right now. I had a little sort of health scare that like got me like sort of set me off. So I've really been having to lean into my spiritual teachings. So the thing you got to know is like we are spiritual beings and physical beings. So we're a whole and you got to treat the whole. So you can't just look to like spiritual thoughts. You got to nutrition, exercise, hydration, medication,
Yeah,
therapy, sleep, all that stuff. You can't just think I'm going to spiritualize my way out of this, or I can't. You got to start there. That's not always going to get you all the way there, though. That can provide a baseline where then you got to look at the world and the tools that are in it. I've had a lot of sort of obsessive compulsive disorder in my life, and there's this great book called Brain Lock that I've been reading. And I've been doing, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a really good things people have thought up where they study these conditions and know. So you got to do that. You got to get in there. I think ultimately that can take you somewhere, but the last steps, that's when you start you have to have your bigger perspective, your spiritual perspective. And that's got to be like, all right, the light is there. It's more real than this. Angels are here. Like I'm not alone. Like there's angels that know what I'm going through. There's guardians, there's guides, there's a plan. Those kinds of things are ultimately the freeing concepts. And you got to be able to say, just because this is in my head doesn't mean it's real. And in fact, only good things are real in the end. I'd say you layer it, right? You got to get your physical, do all that stuff. And then on top of that, your spiritual concepts can help take you over the top. Be patient with yourself, do useful things. Mm-hmm. Do useful things. This is something both Swedenborg says that's what makes heaven. This book I mentioned, it says that's how you get out of obsessive thought. You go and do something useful because that's a direct connection to heaven. So do something that you're doing it because you know it will help someone, and you're focusing on the help that you'll do. That's a connection from. The more you sit and think about yourself, the more access it can just kind of. But if you're trying to do something good, that's a good connection. So that's a very potent spiritual practice. It's like how can I get out of myself and do something that will make some kind of impact? And if you think like this is serving a greater purpose, that can be really useful.
Yeah, I love that. So I was wondering, to anyone that's skeptical about these topics or perhaps may not have had a direct experience yet, what would you recommend them to do to perhaps come to terms with the notion of an afterlife?
You're always gonna have to figure it out for yourself. I mean, there's no, it isn't going to matter to someone who doesn't believe what Swedenborg said. But according to Swedenborg, this cool concept is like, you can't be forced to believe anything spiritual. That if you had, like, even people who have near-death experiences, are they forced? They're not really, because some people will say, oh, this is just oxygen, brain, even the lack of oxygen. So the brain is, even though I don't find those particularly convincing, that it's enough that I've heard someone who had a near-death experience, like, did I just make that all up? What was that? That's freedom. That's the condition you have to be in order to accept something into yourself. So you no matter what, you can't be convinced of a religion, you can't be convinced of a spiritual thing. You have to find it out for yourself. So you're on that journey. What I would do, what's most convinced me of Swedenborg's material, because I haven't had a near-death experience, obviously don't know if he's telling the truth or not, is I take the concepts in there and I apply them to my life, and then I see what's the impact. Yeah. Those concepts I gave to you, why are they big for me? It's because I applied them and I saw the impact. And I think that should be the foundation. Like, can you see the goodness in this stuff? And if you can, then start to trust that a bit, and just don't be hostile toward the idea that there could be something bigger out there. And then either it will become apparent to you or not. But ultimately, that's going to be your journey to be on. It's just a different way of labeling love. So the intent is to be good and loving to everyone. Spirituality is giving you a framework for why that is, but you don't have to go all the way there. You can, if you're going to try to make life better for the human race, you can be on the same team as spiritual people, even if you disagree about the ultimate reality.
Yeah, well, I love this answer because it implies the fact that you don't necessarily need to believe in a certain diet, fitness program or something. You just have to try for yourself and see the results. And then this is how you develop your belief system. So that's great. I'd be curious to know, what's your idea of God these days?
Oh yeah, so it's gotten very, very immediate for me and personal. Like I think of God as a person, like as a friend.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
it's like, yeah, like I think of like when I'm going through hard, okay, you're there, and I know you can figure this out. And the state of heaven that Swedenborg describes is more and more where you you believe everything good comes from God. So like when things that are good, like even just like the fun of doing this interview, like I'm enjoying this right now. That's coming in from God. That's coming in from God. Like that, God is like, Swedenborg describes God like the sun, like radiating out love and truth. And so that's everything that's good is encapsulated in that. So like some of that is getting its way to us, making us have this good conversation. Any good ideas that I have, like it's just like you look around and all the ecosystems on Earth, they're all powered by the sun, even though they're animal that doesn't take energy directly from the sun, but the plants did, and it eats the plants. And that's it. So everything is powered. So if you start to think of, oh, God's everywhere, man, God's everywhere. It's like everything good is like a reflection of that. And ultimately, I am the way that I am because I'm one little part of that prism, that I'm a little reflection of a part of God. So the other people that I see are a reflection of the part of God. So to me, it's very, very like, not that God is human, but we're human because we're like a reflection of what God is. So I think of, it's kind of like large language models. All of a sudden you can talk to a computer like a person and it responds like a person. The divine intelligence, like you think of it like a person, because then you can have this affinity. And when you have the affinity, love is what brings people together. So you and the divine can come together when there's some love there. And the more that you understand, you really only can love a person. You got to understand the character of it and why you would. That's why I like what Swedenborg has so much to say about who God is and what that is. Then that's when it gets really useful. That's when you really have sort of a companion through your life.
What do you think God made us?
Divine providence has for its goal, I'm quoting Swedenborg, divine providence has for its goal a heaven from the human race. So another way to say it, elsewhere he says, the divine love is the intent that everyone should be most profoundly and fully happy. So the intent of creation is, I said before, like there's a love of being useful, which is you want to go make somebody's life better, and you enjoy that, you get satisfaction of knowing you've helped this person. Well, where does that urge come from? According to Swedenborg, like that's the divine impulse. That's who God is the desire to help. That's like another way you could say it. It's the desire to help. So why make people? Because you want to make them happy. That's the point. And in Swedenborg, he gives a particular way in which that happens, which we could spend forever on, but he talks about what he calls the grand human being. So you're wearing the divine design. You're living inside the divine design, meaning the way the human body is arranged is the blueprint for heaven. So you look at the way that everything in the body is. The liver and the heart totally depend on each other, totally different, yet make a single unity together. The small intestine and the lungs, again, everything in the body needs everything else to survive, does everything with the intent to help everything else. It's this total mutual interdependence of different things. That's what the human race is meant to be, is that we are meant to be not only working together like that, but in that same form. Swedenborg would say when he got to the afterlife that he would, because he studied anatomy before, he was an anatomist almost before anything else. So he was he said this was providence kind of priming him for this. But when he would go there and he'd talk to certain angels and he would say, like, those angels are in the arm of the grand human, meaning like what the arm does for the body, which is it's powerful and it can move things. That's what certain angels do for heaven. It's like there's some angels that are more powerful. There's some angels that are more insightful, and they're like the eyes. There's some angels that like are more teach more, and they're like the tongue. Like everybody is like something. Just like every little part of your body will like separate out something or purify something or does some work. All those functions go together to create. In the body, we call it homeostasis, when everything's healthy and all the cells are healthy from that. Yeah. In heaven, it's that there's a heaven, which is homeostasis, meaning happiness. Everyone is happy because of the happiness everyone gives to each other. So that's the point, is to create this incredible happiness machine that continues to grow and evolve forever.
That's great. Curtis, I have one last question for you. What's the meaning of life?
There is a inherent meaning when you're loving people and doing things that matter together. When you get in a state where you know you're doing good for people and you're working on something that has meaning, it's obvious that life matters. You know, it's obvious that life matters. So I think the purpose of life is to choose that. So the purpose of life is to choose that. There's so many things that you can base your life around. I think in life we are sort of learning what is really worth basing your life around and what isn't. And there's things that I used to want, and things that I used to think were important that I don't think so anymore. And there's things that I used to think weren't that important that now I really do. So it's like a little cliche, but you are learning about love and the importance of goodness, and you're slowly like falling in love with that, and you're slowly committing, and you're kind of coming out of your initial cocoon of self-centeredness and materialism into seeing what really matters. And I think that's the opportunity to see that and choose it if you want willingly. I think that's what this is all for. Life is a backdrop by which you get to know the difference and have a chance to if you want to put the effort out to embrace what's beautiful.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wonder if there's any parting messages you would like to leave the audience with today.
Keep up the good work. I feel like there's people who are trying to connect with spiritual stuff. Like there's different kinds of people doing it all over the world, and I think like IANDS community. People watch this podcast. That's you're one. If you think about the body, like the body, that you're one organ in there. You're one little, like, I don't know, pineal gland or something, and go and do what you do. Because I really do think there's a lot of suffering in the world. I know I was saying it's good, but there's still way too much suffering. And I feel like ultimately the answer to that is going to be some kind of reconnection with heaven. And so you got to do your part. So keep it up, keep walking in the light, keep trying to bring the knowledge of the reality of, I don't know, the near-death experience is so cool. It's like, oh, everything seems terrible, I'm dying. Whoa, there's this amazing love out there in this world I didn't think was possible. And oh, my entire life is like, you're going to show me my whole life and what mattered in it. Oh, love actually is what mattered. That's cool. That's so cool. So share that with people. Keep trying to live that. I think if enough people opt in, that changes the balance, and it can change the way that the human race is. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Curtis, I had a wonderful time. It was a brilliant conversation. I would say to yourself, keep up the good work that you're doing. So thank you so much. And yeah, wishing you all the best. Bye for now.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, hi there. Well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the IANDS community, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe share with the ones you love. If you're looking for another video to watch, I think this could be a very good one. New episodes out every Friday. And until then, enjoy the stream we all call live and live the love you wish to see in the world. Bye for now.